The most powerful force on earth is a human soul on fire. You have a deep ache in your soul for something more, to come alive, to let your passion pour from you like an endless well. When your passion comes alive, the magnificence buried deep inside of you is unleashed. Gifts and talents you never realized surface as your life unfolds like poetry. You can do hard things. I can show you how. This is Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching, where I teach you how to heal yourself from the inside out. Hello, welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin. So, womp womp, I didn't release a podcast last Friday. I had full intentions to, but I had yoga teacher training, and that is all-consuming in the best possible way. My friend Stephanie Minter, who I've had on the podcast before. Hello, Stephanie. She had a podcast on here called Medical Grade Mischief. She's since rebranded a bit, but essentially she is a medically trained doctor and osteopath, and she has very Eastern mind concepts. She's also a graduate of all of my programs, which is pretty cool when you have strong students like her, and she's a really close and dear friend of mine as well. So she taught on Friday. She taught anatomy and made it super fun, as she does. And every time, it's great to have a circle of friends that when you're around them, you learn. Every time you're around them, you get uplifted. Every time you're around them, you have deep and meaningful conversations. And then on top of that, you can still be goofballs together. It's like, what did I do to deserve this? Well, I suppose I put in the work. And that's what I'm teaching you how to do. So the rest of the weekend, I actually taught a little module on life coaching. And it's funny because, Saturday was a big overhaul. I taught the CLEAR formula. I taught emotional processing. And then on Sunday, we got into the relationship toolbox of how we navigate relationships with others, how we, acknowledge and address our own needs. And on that note, you'll be happy to know, maybe, this is definitely going to work to your advantage, but I have submitted the courses to Insight Timer 3 times. And each time they're rejected. I feel so rejected. The thing is, they love my meditations. They'll just scoop those up. But for some reason, my podcast, my courses, they won't accept. The first time I did curse, I said something like, blah, 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 shitty emotions. And they scolded me. They said, you can't do that. This is clean. Let's keep it clean. I was like, all right, okay, I guess. And then we had pulled the audio from a video, and they were able to tell, and then we re-leveled it, and then they're like, no, this is still audio. So then I completely re-recorded on my microphone that drowns out almost like all sound, like 95% of other sounds, and it still didn't work, y'all. So what I'm doing is, now I might still release a course on there. I'm not sure at this point. I am pretty determined though, so actually I probably will, but this is to your advantage because I am just going to release in podcast form all of the audios I just recorded for Insight Timer, and they gave me the big So that's your advantage because I'm going to release them here for free. So today's podcast, I'm talking about neurotransmitters, dopamine, GABA, oxytocin, and serotonin. And then after that, we'll have a series for a couple good weeks of these courses that I recorded that are rich with information. And on that note, I have 6 spots left as of now in my online group coaching. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast and if you've wanted to coach with me, coaching is really hot right now. It's so hot. And I certainly have been doing it for almost a decade. So I know my stuff. I certify coaches. I have some really strong students that have graduated and even one that might be joining me on this venture. But it's $99 a month. That's right. You heard it. As of now, we're going to have a Facebook group. I don't want to stay on Facebook for that long because I don't want to be on social medias. That being said, I very much regulated myself using some formulas, boundaries, and I'll talk about some of that stuff when we get a little bit more to the podcast. But if you're interested in the coaching group, and you'll be surrounded by conscious people, you have accountability. I give you work to do every week based on your life and what your goals are. And if you just need that little push, that little nudge of accountability, in addition, every month everybody gets coached. Now, because of the group dynamic setting, you'll have access to and see other people get coached, which is super cool because any students who have been through my program will tell you that one of the most powerful things about it is watching me coach, just watching me in action. So if you're like, yes, I want to be a part of that, and I try to over deliver. If I think I'm going to under deliver something, I won't do it. That's just how I am. So yeah, if you're interested, you can reach out to me, Erin at erincoach.com, and let's get you signed up. I just have a few more spots. Also, if you want to go to India, if you get a hair up your butt and you want to go to India, we do have a few spots left for that as well. We're leaving in June, so if you're interested, you've been hanging on there, you got to reach out because that ship is sailing soon. Or I guess the plane is flying soon. So anyways, reach out. All right, on to the podcast. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters are chemical messengers inside of the brain, and there are many of them. Today, I'm going to focus on 4 main neurotransmitters that are produced by the brain and help to do everything from motivate us, to regulate our mood, to help us feel loved, to push us to action, to help us feel content. Neurotransmitters are powerful. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll know that the OG title was Empowered Serenity Coaching. Then it changed to Thriving After Addiction. And then I finally settled on Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching for now. Now, if you are listening to this and you remember me way back then, you'll know that I had a problem with substance abuse. I used to have an eating disorder. I actually had a 12-year bulimia eating disorder. And when you have that kind of repetitive trauma, or even if you've had like just a big boom, like one trauma, it changes your brain. It affects your amygdala, which is your fear center. It can affect your basal ganglia, which is the core center that produces your dopamine. So there's a lot of things that can happen from our life experiences with how well our brain is able to produce those chemicals so that we can help to regulate ourselves. And so I am talking today about educating about the neurotransmitters, what they do, what it looks like when you're in dysfunction, and then also some solutions. Some of them are simple ones you could do on your own, but other ones are some formulas that I have that literally increase these neurotransmitters for you. And not just dumping them in your brain like some sort of synthetic pharmaceutical, but rather stimulate your body's own mechanisms to start producing and normalizing these neurotransmitters within you. And I'm confident to talk about this because I am my own client when it comes to this. I am currently on 2 formulas called the Release Formula and the Anxiety Normalization SART code that has all these neurotransmitters in it. And I use myself as an experiment. I'm the great experimenter. I'm always guinea pigging myself because why would I put you through something if I am not willing to put myself through it? And besides that, when I talk about everything I talk about on this podcast, it is because I have felt it from within the framework of my body. And so I really try to stay in integrity and teach from that space. I mean, if you have a great yoga instructor, they are hopefully teaching from the framework of their body. And when you teach from that space, it is mixed with beautiful wisdom of life experience and discernment and perspective, which I think is very valuable rather than just a theory and concept. Because you could talk about anything in theory and it doesn't mean it's going to land. So I try to talk about this stuff that I've experienced from my heart, as honest as I can possibly be. All right, so let's get to the neurotransmitters. So the 4 I'm talking about: GABA, serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine. So GABA. GABA is gamma aminobutyric acid. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain. It helps to regulate and reduce neuronal activity, promoting a calm and relaxed state. GABA is involved in reducing anxiety, promoting sleep, and regulating muscle tone. When GABA levels are deficient, it can lead to anxiety disorders, insomnia, and an overactive brain. So I went to a neurotransmitter balancing summit, we'll call it. It was a long weekend. It was like a Thursday to a Sunday. And I haven't even thought of her in so long, but I've been into neurotransmitters before it was cool. Mostly because I was suffering. So this had to be over a decade ago because I hadn't even opened up Thrive yet. I flew out to California and I was at a summit with a doctor who is well known for, she has 2 books one of them is called The Diet Code. And there's another one, I think it's something like The Emotion Code. And anyways, she talks about how to balance out your brain chemistry. But the thing is when I went to that summit, and again, this is over a decade ago, the solution that she gave was a whole bunch of supplements. And I remember that I was just getting into this, and I did get some benefits. We're using like L-tyrosine and acetylcholine and a couple of other neurotransmitter stimulating supplements. And the only thing is that I looked across of what I needed, and I was like, man, it feels like I need all of these. And so I was taking something ridiculous, like 20 pills a day, and maybe even more. And I remember the acupuncturist I work with, she was like, wait, how many are you taking? And I told her, and she's like, no. She's like, that's going to clog up your kidneys. We don't need this. Like, you're already kind of an on-the-go person. So anyways, I'm mentioning that because I found different ways to regulate that. But certainly GABA is something that is very common in some sleep blends. A lot of times you'll see things like lemon balm, which the Latin term, I believe, is Melissa officinalis. I know that because my sister's name is Melissa. And that's a very calming herb. Melatonin is another one, valerian root. And GABA is a common one that you'll also see that really helps to reduce anxiety. It could also bring on sleepiness depending on where your neurotransmitters are, because if you don't need GABA and then you take it, it actually can do the opposite if you take the crude substance. And I learned that the hard way. I remember having insomnia really, really bad one night because I took too much of the GABA supplement. But GABA, if you're deficient in it, you're going to feel a bit more anxious. It's going to be hard for you to relax, and it's going to be hard to sleep. You know, there's Venn diagram crossovers of other neurotransmitters and minerals and so forth that would help with those as well. But just so you know that this is some of the things that GABA is responsible for. Serotonin. Serotonin is one that we know. And did you know that if you go out in the sun, it helps your body to produce not just vitamin D, but serotonin. Yay! Because it helps with your circadian rhythm. Serotonin at the night turns into melatonin. But let me talk a little bit about it. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that regulates mood, appetite, and sleep. It plays a crucial role in regulating emotions, promoting feelings of well-being and happiness, and serotonin deficiency is often associated with depression, anxiety, and mood disorders. So a couple times a week, I wake up and I go out, and I'll either go out to the beach or so where I'm living right now, there used to be this beautiful forest, and I would wake up in the morning, I call it my not coffee. Right now I'm enjoying mud water, though I think my stomach is not liking it, so I'll probably switch to something else soon. Anyways, I would sit on my porch and I would look at the forest, and then after a while the sun would finally come up over the forest, and I was very content with that. Well, the way things are in this world, there is a huge condominium complex that's being made right across the street. And so they bulldozed the entire forest, which was very sad. I kind of felt, I was like, Ferngully, where's Robin Williams as the bat to save us this time? Didn't happen. But now I guess the silver lining there is I get to sit on my porch, and the sun comes up and I see it right away because it's just a flat, clear line. So I just kind of tip my hat to that, I suppose, because I get to see the early, early morning rays of sun. When I'm sitting out there, I definitely have my face and upper chest exposed, and depending on how sassy I'm feeling, I'll kind of look around, and then I'll open up my my robe kind of like I'm mooning or sunning the sun, just so I can feel the sun's rays on my body. I have very pale skin. I'm one of those lucky people that, and I'm being sarcastic here, that gets sun and then turns red and then turns pretty much back to white. Maybe there's a slight tinge, but I do not tan. It's just not, I'm in Florida for 20 years and you would think that I was from Antarctica. My skin is so white. So that's just the way it is. That being said, I like to get those early morning rays because I can feel literally in my body the chemical changes that are happening when I do that. And it feels like I just feel the different rays as the sun starts going up. It changes. And I just feel my mood just so much better. So that's something that I do a few days a week. And when I do facial analysis with people, I do a whole holistic lifestyle inventory. It's one of the questions that I ask. I'm like, how much sunlight are you getting? Are you getting early morning sun? Are you getting sunset sun? Are you just getting noon sun? Another thing that is pretty cool about seeing the sun that early, not only does it, help to regulate your mood and your sleep cycles and all this, but it supposedly makes you a bit more tolerant to sun when it's a bit more high in the sky. I can attest to this, that I very rarely get sunburnt anymore. I watch the sunrise almost every day. And I mean, I'm not like out in, noon sun for hours, but I can go out for a good 45 minutes, hour, and I'm fine. So, and with someone who has pale skin as much as me, that seems odd. And I can tell you that I was a lot unhealthier, maybe 20 years ago, when I was younger. And I was so deficient in all these different minerals. And that just wasn't the case. I would get burnt in 10 minutes. It was like a lobster. It was pretty bad. So there's something to it, folks. So serotonin, to regulate, you can get some sunshine. All right, oxytocin. Oxytocin is referred to as the love hormone or cuddle hormone. Love that. It is involved in social bonding, trust, and attachment. Oxytocin plays a role in maternal-infant bonding, especially when a mother is breastfeeding, romantic relationships, and social interactions. Deficiency in oxytocin can lead to difficulties in forming social connections and bonding with others. Yes, if I do not get my hug quota for the day, I definitely feel a little mopey and sad. And so Matt actually does this thing where I'll say, can you crush me into my body? And he'll either just lay on me he's doing jujitsu and he's just kind of grounding me, or he'll hug me and I say, crush me back into my body. Now, I don't think I'm on the spectrum, but he has told me that's a very spectrum-y thing, which I find amusing. I think I'm just a very kinesthetic, touchy-feely person, and I just want to feel my flesh and muscles and bones all pressing together. It makes me feel very safe. So this is a common thing with people who like to get tied up, I hear, like shibari type stuff. And so I'm like, maybe I would be into that. Who knows? But in the meantime, I'll just get big crushing hugs and have my boyfriend lay on me when I feel like I need to be ground back into my body. So if you're feeling like touch starved, you probably are deficient in oxytocin. Dopamine, big word lately. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with reward and motivation. It is involved in regulating pleasure, motivation, movement. Dopamine does play a role in addiction, but also learning and decision-making processes. When dopamine levels are deficient, it can lead to symptoms such as lack of motivation, decreased pleasure, and even movement disorders like Parkinson's disease. I would also add to that indecisiveness. If our dopamine levels aren't regulated, we're just kind of bouncing around in our head. And for me, now I want to be completely transparent here. I was running a group online for Mr. Tim Goyach, which I'm not doing that anymore. But because I had to be so active on there, I mean, I was pouring so many hours into that group, and I actually found myself addicted to my phone. Like I've never felt, certainly everyone has some level of addiction to their phone, I believe, but I'd never been sitting there oh, something's missing. Oh, okay, let me grab my phone. It was just very obvious to me. And beyond that, I felt like I couldn't stop doing it. So I recognized it, publicly addressed it. I said very publicly, I have an addiction to my phone. I don't have shame in it. I've been addicted to other things. I understand why, because I understand neurotransmitters. It's not like I'm a bad person, I'm deficient in all the things. It's probably I'm deficient in dopamine. So what I started doing is, again, like going out in the sun, so balancing my serotonin. I am making sure I'm getting exercise. I'm making sure my sleep cycles are good. So I'm doing like a lot of back end work, just to be clear. But I started taking a formula called Anxiety Normalization Sarcode. This is a formula that Mr. Tim Goyech makes, and I have noticed some amazing results. I have been combining it with the release formula, and the combination of those two formulas are really like regulating my brain. It's the one is meant to release deep trauma from the hippocampus, which is where your like deeper level memories are stored inside of your brain. And the other one is meant to balance out your neurotransmitters. So what I've been doing with treatment, I've been working with many, many people lately on the treatment of trauma. And so when I started doing that, I recognized that my behavior started changing and that the behaviors of my clients started changing. So I've worked with people who have had, capital T trauma, and this is the combination that I use with them. Again, they're doing therapy, they're getting sunlight, they're drinking structured water, like they're doing a bunch of other things too. So I never want to give you the idea that these are just like, oh, I don't have to like do anything else in my life, just a magic pill. No, that's allopathic medicine thinking. You do have to make changes in your life. Of course you do. The thing is that when you're taking these formulas, it helps to regulate your brain chemicals because it stimulates your body's own mechanisms to produce this in your brain. So what I've noticed in my clients is their coaching sessions going much easier. We're getting deeper, quicker. For me personally, what I've noticed, the first kind of things I started noticing is that I didn't notice any change with my phone at first for the first 2 weeks. I was just like, I publicly announced this experiment. I'm going to look like a dipshit. But, I like to be also transparent. And then I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not getting results for this, why the hell would I recommend it to other people? The first thing I started noticing is that I stopped snacking so much. Like, I didn't even realize how much I was snacking. I guess that maybe sounds bad because I am an aware, conscious person. But everyone checks out. Like, everyone. I don't care who you are. So I just recognized that I wasn't snacking as much. As a result of that, I started, I don't really weigh myself, but I definitely started like noticing the bones in my face more and like my muscles more. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm probably losing some fat. I'm losing some weight. So that's cool. I started also noticing that I had more space around my, tendency to get frustrated or irritated with things. Now, meditation helps that too, but I just noticed a change and a shift in that. I also noticed that whereas I would come home and want to maybe decompress with some TV or, again with phone, that started becoming less. So after the 2 week mark, I did start noticing less interest in my phone, which was cool. Now you could say that I'm not managing that group anymore, but I have a bunch of groups online that I am a part of. So I don't think it was as much that, but I think that I'm able to direct my brain in different ways. And this is the biggest thing I'm finding with replenishing my dopamine is I'm not walking around with this feeling that something's missing. Something's missing and I don't know what it is and how can I meet this? And so then what you do is grab your phone or some sort of like impulsive behavior to start to like trigger those feel-good chemicals. I'm noticing that I'm not doing that as much. Like not perfectly, certainly a bit, but I'm able to like pause that and not kind of engage in that behavior and then go do something more productive. Like I was studying language last night. Like I slept fairly well, but I woke up like 3 a.m. I got a solid 6 hours of sleep. But I woke up and rather than scrolling on my phone, I went online and I started learning Malayalam. And I found partners to practice with, which was pretty cool. So it was really very obvious to me, like, I really redirected that behavior. So the neurotransmitters, if you feel like you're out of whack with them, again, using some of the strategies that I listed in this podcast. And if you feel like, I'm doing that already, Erin, this is really tough, you might consider booking a facial analysis with me, because literally you can, if you're already doing those things and then you have the formulas on top of that, and let's say like you're doing some coaching, something like that, I've noticed a huge difference in myself and others. So I hope that this podcast was helpful for you. I hope that it resonated. I hope that it was educational. Again, if you're interested in my online coaching group, you can email me, Erin at erincoach.com. I have about 6 spots left. There is a vetting process. If you've never worked with me in any capacity, we would need to do at least one coaching session. There is also prep work, like listening to some of these podcasts, so you know how to use the tools. Here's the thing. I want a high quality group of people. I want people who are going to put in the work, who are willing to grow, who are willing to ask questions, be questioned, and be held accountable and show up for themselves. Those are the kind of people that I like to work with. And after doing this for like 10 years, I can kind of call the shots in that way. So again, if you're interested, again, $99 a month for this coaching group. I hope that you can come be a part of it. And yeah, thanks for listening. I hope you have a fantastic day, and namaste. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast and if it's helping you, please consider writing a review. You can go to iTunes or Google Play, go into the search bar and type in Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching, scroll down, and you can leave a review. This helps other people to find me, as well as bumps us up in the search ratings. Also, this podcast is sponsor-free, so that means we don't receive anything for doing it. If you feel so inclined and this podcast is helping to support you and you want to return the favor and help to support any production costs of the podcast, feel free to give a donation to a Venmo link, Thrive Yoga Fit, or PayPal, Erin at erincoach.com. If you don't have the means, don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere. You're all good. But if you would like to give back, you can give back in those ways. Thank you so much. Namaste.